Responsible Gambling Awareness Week.
That's right, it is Responsible Gambling Awareness Week, and that's why we're down here at the Geelong Racecourse for breakfast. And it is a significant morning. It's been a significant week, as you would have heard throughout the course of RSN Breakfast and all our other programs on RSN. We're now joined by a panel. We've got Barry Hall coming up from 7:30 this morning, but we've got Paul Bongiorno, who is the president of the Geelong Racing Club, Grant Boyd, the chief executive of Bethany, which we'll find out a little bit more about that company shortly, and also Serge Sardo, who is the Victorian Responsible Gambling, well, he's part of the foundation and he's also the CEO, so we'll talk to Serge as well. But we've got to talk to Paul first because he's having us down here for breakfast. Paul, welcome and thank you.
Thanks, Whitey. It's good to be here.
I'll tell you what, Mick and I, our alarms were set for 3:15 this morning, which is quite early. But when you come down here to Geelong and you see a sunrise over the track, it's almost worth just coming down for that. It looks absolutely spectacular.
Oh, it's a great place to live, and I had to get up about 6:15 because that's Geelong. You're only about 5 minutes away from anywhere.
And the success of the racecourse, we're down here today. There's races today on the synthetic track, which we see a lot of during the winter. Can you mark the success of the club, of the course, since that has actually come into play?
Well, particularly the new ProRide synthetic track has been particularly successful for us. We did have some problems with its predecessor, the Thorough track.
Yep.
But since it's been redone with the synthetic, it's raced really well. There was an industry report that came out about a month ago, in fact, that demonstrated the significant improvement in the safety of the track, and it's now racing, the stats are showing it's racing just as well as any turf tracks, which is really important for us because, as I said, there were some problems with the previous one. So that's not so much of a concern anymore, and I think it's being very well received by trainers and punters particularly are confident to bet on it.
You've had some problems with the grass track as well. I go back to the 2011 Boxing Day cancellation of the meeting, which was an uproar at the time and a lot of disappointed people. Have you moved on from that point, and how's the grass track going, Paul?
Yeah, we have, Mick. That was a significant day, a disappointing day for us, and we'd found that the track had been deteriorating over the summer. The bane of a lot of grass track managers is this poana that infiltrates and contaminates the track, and that was happening more and more, and it was taking away from the body of the track. And by the end of that summer, there was really no guts to the track. I can remember being out there myself and tearing it up like it was carpet. You could just tear off 6 feet of it fairly easily. So we made the decision, with the support of the industry, to redo the grass track. And immediately after the Cup last year, we basically killed that track, which was a ryegrass, and have replaced it with a kikuyu grass, which is coming along extremely well. And is probably close to good enough to race on now, but we'll be conservative, and we're scheduled to have our first race meeting back on it in September, with the idea of the Cup in October.
Okay, I mentioned before we've got Serge Sardo here, who is the CEO of the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation. Serge, explain what your role is, and I guess also the significance of this week.
Great, thanks, and thanks for inviting me along. It's great to be here. First of all, the Foundation is a fairly new statutory authority that started on the 1st of July last year, and essentially our role is to fund agencies that deliver treatment and support services for problem gamblers. We also have strong community education and awareness programs around problem gambling and responsible gambling. We do a lot of research and we provide a lot of information. So all the ads you see on television around problem gambling, things, that's us. In effect, we're here. Responsible Gambling Awareness Week is about balancing up the message. I mean, we recognise that for most of your listeners, 95% of Victorians do gamble responsibly, and we recognise that. But what we do know is that gambling for many people causes serious problems. So our message around responsible gambling is not just for gamblers, I've got to say. It's really for the whole community, sporting clubs, the industry, and all stakeholders to really get on board this notion about creating safe gambling environments. And we're particularly concerned this year around the impact that particularly sports betting advertising is having on children. And so we really want to call on all parents to really get gambling on the alert agenda for their kids, because it is having a significant impact.
And on that very point, that's the reason why we've got Grant Boyd, who's CEO of Bethany, who do a magnificent job in providing community support Grant, your work would be tireless, I would have thought.
Morning, Mick. How are you?
Terrific, mate.
Yes, it is. Look, we actually celebrated our 145th birthday this month as an organisation. So we've been in the Geelong community giving people who need a hand up and a bit of assistance, providing them with a range of support services. And one of those services is the Gamblers Help Program, and we've been doing that for about over 15 years now in the Geelong community and also in the southwest of Victoria. So we provide people who are affected by problem gambling with a range of services, including things like counselling, education and awareness programs. And as Serge said, I mean, most people gamble responsibly, but there's a small percentage that do get into strife, and that's where we're there to assist when that's needed.
How do you reach out to people that have got an issue? Do you rely on them to call you and then you give up counselling?
Look, there's a number of ways in which you can do that. There's a state phone line that people can call into and be connected to services such as ours. We run education programs out into the community to encourage people, if it's for themselves or for a partner or a family member, to contact us if they think they might need some support with those issues.
Is there specific traits to a person, to an individual, as to the reason why they go down the problem gambling path? Is it a low self-esteem, for example? Look,
it can be a combination of things, Mick. You might find that there's other issues associated with that. There might be some mental health problems. It might arise from some stresses or strains in a family, or it could just be part of the makeup of an individual that they get themselves involved in some of those more addictive behaviours.
Serge, I want to go back to what you were saying before about live odds in part of television broadcasts and what sort of impact that's having on young people, because I know it's a major concern, and we've learnt a lot about that just during the course of this week.
Yeah, look, you'd have to be a Tibetan monk living in a cave not to tap into the community concerns at the moment about sports betting advertising. It is a serious problem, but I do want to say the problem extends beyond just live odds. So live odds are creating an atmosphere where kids are talking about the game on Saturday based on the odds of their team winning.
And that's anecdotal evidence you're getting from schools and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we also have significant research that shows that children are very susceptible to sports betting advertising. They remember brands and they certainly recall a lot of the ad. So it is having a significant cut through. But the problem extends beyond live odds. The problem extends to the overall level of sports betting advertising. So it's not just about odds, but it's about the constant bombardment of ads that you see during sporting events. And I think that's the critical issue. And also some of the content of those ads are also a little bit dubious as well. So what we know is we are normalising gambling for children, and that is alarming. And I think as a community, we have a responsibility to create environments for our kids that are safe. We know kids are gambling. And we know that a lot of problem gamblers develop their problem before the age of 18. So up to a fifth of problem gamblers were problem gamblers before the age of 18. So there's some really alarming statistics out there that we need to listen to.
So you think, sorry Mickey, but do you think that is the biggest concern as we go into Responsible Gambling Awareness Week? And we've been talking all week about gambling responsibly. That's one issue. But I guess the other issue is for adults or for parents, that if they're wanting to gamble, the responsibility is to make sure that children are not brought into that culture at such a young age before they're old enough to make their own decisions, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we know, your question before about why do people develop problems with gambling is we know that the more people are exposed to gambling, the more they're around gambling and the more they're bombarded by gambling, the more likely they are of developing problems with gambling themselves. So, we've had we have situations where parents might buy their kids lottery tickets for Christmas. We've had situations where parents are gambling with their kids on the internet, or, the dad taking the kid to the TAB, all those things. Well, harmless as it may sound, and I don't want to be a killjoy, but what it's effectively doing is normalising that gambling activity for children, where they are going to be more than likely gamblers themselves.
Well, I'm guilty of that. Yeah, I must say. I have a bet on the races, and I can honestly say right now I'll have a bet at home, and I expose my children to that situation. And obviously it's something I have to think about, because I just think you do it because you do it, and you don't take into account whether or not it's going to have a long-lasting effect with your kids.
Yeah, look,
and you find there's strong research to suggest that they could go down the problem path because of that situation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the research shows that, again, the more kids are exposed to gambling, the more they're likely to take on gambling as an everyday activity. Look, it's not too dissimilar to drinking. I mean, as adults, we need to be responsible how we expose our kids to drinking. And you see the latest ads around drinking are about the dad, telling the kid, go get me a beer. Look, it's not too dissimilar, and look, I'm absolutely rapt that I've convinced at least one person here this morning and raised that awareness. So that's terrific. But the point you've made is exactly the point we're worried about. Gambling is not on the risk register for parents, and what we're saying is it should be.
Yeah, and the reason why I think it's such a probably a contentious issue is that, and Paul probably backed me up here, I've been going to the races since I was probably 2 years old with my mother and father. Yeah. But in saying that, I engrossed racing because, one, the animal, and two, the social aspects of what it meant to me. And I think there's some real positive affirmations that can come out of the connection with the racing fraternity as well. So it's not all doom and gloom, I think, but as you say, it's just got to be really challenged to the parents to make sure you get that balance right, I think, in terms of lifestyle decisions you make.
Yeah, look, and look, racing, is a tradition. There's entertainment around that, and certainly we're probably, least concerns about racing in that. But what exposure to gambling generally does, it also exposes their kids to the notion of gambling, and now we have internet opportunities that are just everywhere. So it might start with harmlessly going with your dad to the races or TAB, but now kids are carrying a casino in their pocket. And that's the concern.
How do you sell that balance, Paul? Obviously, you're a supporter of this week, and that's the reason why you're hosting this particular forum in the Breezy's room this morning. How do you sell that message in terms of getting the balance right?
Well, I think it's very much about having rules for yourself. I use the word punter rather than gambler, and I prefer the approach of a more calculated system whereby, as you would do, we like to follow the form. We like to follow the racing industry as a sport and do our form, do our homework, and then have a bet and in a more calculated way. I think one of the problems now is this proliferation of advertising for sports betting, and people bet more on a whim, which is dangerous. And I'd much prefer to have a system where you're more calculated about it.
Do you cringe when you see codes like the AFL, NRL, the NBA, always flashing up when you're sitting at home, live odds, betting in play, all those sort of things?
Look, I do, because in many ways what it's saying to the community is that just going to the footy and enjoying and loving the game is no longer the ultimate.
You're saying it's not the focus.
It's not the focus. What it's saying is you need to have a bet to extend that enjoyment of the game, and to me that's going to be a problem, because what it's doing is it's embedding gambling revenue into the business model of these clubs, and it's going to be harder and harder to detach.
Through your work with the community, Grant, is that where you see the problem lies?
Oh, look, very much. I think it is about educating. From the parents' point of view, it's about an education issue, but I think we're equally concerned that the normalisation of gambling and the exposure to children, that we need to really think seriously as a community about whether that's what we want, or do we need to think about some form of regulation, as we do with tobacco and alcohol, so that we can have more of a balance.
Fascinating. To Paul Bongiorno, to Grant Boyd, to Serge Sardo, thank you very much for all coming along and sharing your experiences and your knowledge on what is obviously an issue. And it's something that we hope we've helped address during the course of not only this morning, but during the course of the week, all part of Responsible Gambling Awareness Week. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up to the 7 o'clock news, stick with us with RSN. Don't forget, Barry Hall in the studio, down here having breakfast with us from 7:30 this morning.
RSN.